Now, then the spread of regulations, this corridor of regulation will be opened up to the extent that there will also be a prevention of regulation arbitrage, where, for example, people try to find the best possible location for sort of being a magnet that actually draws people to more attractive places where it is clearly understood to market participants that they are not all that serious about market regulations. And we said, and also the French Republic, that hedge funds need to be registered, they need to be submitted to supervision, they need to be encouraged to give the necessary, to disclose the necessary information, particularly leverage effects linked to their assets. And what is also not negligible, even though it may sound rather bureaucratic, that derivatives need to be standardized increasingly and need to be put to the test whether they are actually resilient, so are submitted to stress tests. The fifth point is remuneration of managers. There's already a proposal on the table by the FSF as it used to exist, and now FSB, particularly as regards negative incentives which resulted from the current remuneration regime. And then the sixth point is the so-called tax haven issue that the Chancellor already referred to. The OECD is going to publish the list today, which summarizes three different classifications. One of countries that already have quite clearly implemented the OECD code, the second that have announced to do that, and the third that have neither done that nor announced that. It's quite remarkable that in the English text what we see is the era of banking secrecy is over. So that, after all, is a tangible result of this G20 round. Had you asked me a few months ago whether the G20 would ever come to this kind of result, I would have asked you whether you were dreaming. So, seventh point on the list, accounting standards. I don't need to explain to you what this is all about. We still have to contend with rather pro-cyclical effects. The Americans are faster and better than the Europeans in adapting their rules to this current situation. And there's also the rating agencies. They are supposed to be submitted to oversight too. And it is supposed to be inquired whether there are conflicts of interest, where rating agencies, for example, once these structures, these products are structures, rating agencies have actually had a say in that. Let me leave it at that, because all of the rest would go too much into the details. But all of these different points, all of these 8 points, have been very important, have been all the way up to the top of our agenda. We've been dealing with them. We are gratified to know that they are given due reflection in the document, and I'm also very gratified that this G20 summit meeting has actually said we want to bolster the role of the international financial institutions. Well, as I said yesterday, the Federal Republic of Germany, as an export-oriented country, has a massive interest in seeing to it that these facilities are being used, that our trading partners among the emerging economies and the developing countries also come to a path towards growth. And let me tell you, I think it's also very gratifying to note that there is no obligation for any G20 country in this text to allow for any further fiscal stimulus packages. Thank you. Questions, please. Mr. Scharlach. First row. Madam Chancellor, could you perhaps outline the role of the new President Barack Obama in some greater detail? What sort of interest did he display in more regulation, and to what extent did he also insist on further help for the emerging and developing countries? Well, let me say that we work together very well, and if you think of the fact that all the way from the Chinese president, Russian president, American president, the chairman of the African Union, ASEAN, many different civilizations, many different countries were rallied around this table. There was a spirit of camaraderie which allowed us today to come to decisions in a very concrete way, to work in this group of heads of state on the text, something that was inconceivable only a short while ago, and the American president, as we others were too, was very interested in seeing concrete results being brought about. He was also instrumental in bringing about concrete results and solutions, so it was a very good cooperative spirit he brought to the table. Not only something that is limited to public statements and public declarations, but that has stood the test of genuine negotiating work. And this is something that we're familiar with in the EU, after all, that more than 20 countries are trying to bring about solutions that are acceptable to all. And but I also have to say that it is simply not possible to work any other way in this globalized world, and it's something that each and everyone around the table actually did here in London, and that only made the result possible. Niemeyer, Madam Chancellor, you said these were tough negotiations. How satisfied then are you with the result? I mean, hedge funds still may operate in the City of London. People were rather afraid that they would be effectively shut down and that the United Kingdom would sink into oblivion if these things no longer work. Now, if they're controlled and monitored, will these matters run their course just like in the past? And how high is the danger of this simply continuing? Well, the whole of our work, says the Chancellor, was, after all, to see to it that such a crisis is not happening again. So we don't want matters to simply run the course that they've always run, but that doesn't mean that there will be no modern financial instruments to speak of. They will be more limited. For example, if you look at the paragraph on hedge funds, it's very clear, reference is very clearly made to leveraging, to limits being placed on leverage and the risks that that entails. So very clearly this means that you will have to have full confidence in your product when you present it on the market and when you want to use it, and this is exactly the right way of going about this. I mean, genuine ground in the real economy, we have no situation where when you go to market with your products, not have to stand the test of time. And the same goes now for financial products. This is not only right, it's also fair. But financial markets will have to continue to function. But maybe the profit margins, the possibilities to actually make a quick profit and then vanish, that is limited. And that means, after all, also that the losses will not be sort of spread around so widely and socialized as they are now. Chancellor, the way you put it now, and the way that it was expressed to us during the summit, you feel that you have carried the day here, that you are victorious, or are there certain things that actually make you still, where you still say, well, I'm dissatisfied, or have you actually come closer to each other? Well, I think it's a victory for global cooperation, and I would say those who benefit from the results of this summit, primarily, for example, the developing countries and weaker countries, those are the ones who have really carried the day, and that, I think, is in many ways a victory of common sense. Things that have brought us into this crisis are the things we want to avoid in the future, and this is exactly what I wanted, what we wanted, and it's quite obviously the case that we were not the only ones to want it, but others also had this vested interest, and that was actually, I could actually feel that the emerging countries and China very explicitly said, although they were not at the root cause of this banking crisis, they said that they would insist on a financial market order, because that obviously to them is also a certain amount of a guarantee that these things will not happen again in the future.